Well, it's a good afternoon now. Motion to come out of closed at 12:06 by Reeve Holland and was carried. And we have one motion that was to be said here by Councillor Cromwell.
In regards to item 8.1, recommend to county council to rescind motion CC 512 as discussed in closed.
So the motion was to recommend to county council to rescind motion CC 24-512 as discussed and closed. All in favor? It's 4. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
4 and 4, motion was defeated. Being a tie, defeated, so. And motion to adjourn? Okay, I'm just gonna adjourn and we will get back at what, 12:25? 12:25 or 12:35.
Good afternoon. Welcome back, everyone. We'd like to call to order the special county council meeting for November 19th. And being that we don't have full council, we will not be able to do any additions to the agenda. So I will seek approval of pardon me. I apologize. I'll back up. I would like to do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge Athabasca County is located on First Nations, Treaty 6 and Treaty 8 traditional territory. We respect and honor all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples' connection to these lands, their history, language, and culture. And approval of the agenda? Okay, that would be Deputy Reeve Minns. All those in favor? Any opposed?
In favor.
I'm sorry, there was one opposed? No, in favor. In favor, okay. 2, 3, 5, 6. We have 7 of us, 7-0. So if we could move into item 3.1, which is the 2025 operating and capital budgets follow-up. Has everyone had a chance to read the reports? Okay, do we have any questions or concerns regarding the report itself? Everybody's happy? All right, so if we look at page 7 of our agenda, which is our budget summary, I'm wondering if it would be council's wish to bring forward anything that they have concerns about with regards to the budget, or if you would prefer to go page by page. Okay, whoever wants to bring up. Who would like to begin? Dum, 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 dum. Anybody? Well, I'll begin if that is get us moving forward here. I'd like to start on page 9, please, of the legislative budget. The one item that I was a little bit concerned about, especially going into a new term coming up in 2025, is the RMA conference fees at $772 per member. In 2024, the RMA conference fees, I believe, for just myself was $1,491. And so I would look at requesting the increase to that particular budget go from 7,000 to 13,500. And that's only if there's no other increases to conferences next year.
Madam Chair, I did review this, and actually, if you look at the policy 2009, that is elected official remuneration and expenses, each counselor has 7,300 per year. That's for conferences, meeting, and convention, including the registration costs, lodging, meals, mileage, airfare, and car rental. So all your RMA fees should be coming out of that 7,300, which is the first line item under line 2143. We have 68,000 budgeted for the year, which is 7,300 for 8 counselors and 9,600 for Reeve. That's on page 9 as well. So these additional RMA conference fees, I believe these were in effect before this policy came in, and they should actually not even be there, along with also the accommodation and meals for RMA convention, which is the next line, 2211, 11,000, as well as the mileage for our RMA convention, 4,000 under 2211. I believe all these items should not be in this budget because that 68,000 should be factoring in all your expenses.
Thank you. I appreciate that. In Schedule B of that remuneration policy, and my understanding when we went through it all was that RMA was separate from the conference and convention. So on Schedule B of that particular policy, it mentions funding will be provided for all elected officials to attend rural municipalities of Alberta conventions. And then it goes on to say the conference meetings and conventions annual budget allocations. So RMA was always separate from that particular fund.
Okay, then
And-
we will up the budget for the RMA registration fees if that's the
Thank
case.
you. Is that the understanding council has?
That is my understanding.
So yeah, that's the only reason why, yeah, I brought that one forward. So I appreciate the adjustment if it's possible to be made there. The other one that I wanted to mention on page 11 in administrative services. And this is in light of our current postal strike and how we currently function with our mail out system. And I'm concerned, of course, of what that those hiccups that is that's going to create through our postal strike. So I'm wondering if we can dedicate funds, and I don't know what that would look like, to implement electronic fund transfers. So EFTs, if that is something that council would like to consider. I do think that it's something very important for us to move forward with and probably would streamline quite a bit, although I do understand the steps it may take to get there. But I don't know what that would cost.
Madam Chair, as far as costs go, our software is already capable of doing it. We just have to go through the process of talking with every single vendor that we have to try to switch them over to doing EFTs, which would be a bit of a timely process, but it can be done. It just will take a little bit, but we can certainly work on it in 2025.
Understood. Do you need any further resources or anything like that to help with that, or is it quite an undertaking?
We'd probably bring that back for review. Although we respect the reeve, just because one member of council asked for a service to be undertaken, we prefer if a majority of council asked for a major service change. Let's put it that way.
No,
The other
understood.
thing is we, just so you know, before we would undertake anything financial like this, we want to undergo a good security review. And that would dictate what we can do.
No, and I appreciate your words. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just assumed that it's always at the will of council, not just one counselor. So I appreciate that. And I don't know if we need a motion for administration for 2025 to look into it or what that would entail. I'm not sure which is the best way to go there.
We would prefer a motion for us to, and we'll bring back a quick discussion paper to council.
Thank you. Do we wait till the end for the motion? Is okay with everyone? Yeah. Does anybody else have anything they wanted? Councillor Cromwell?
Thank you. On page 23 and 24 of your agenda, under fire protection and emergency management, Highway 63, line item 2544, just wondering why there's no water charges for D1 as they are hooked up to water and fill up also at the truck station. That's question number one.
To the chair, to Councillor Cromwell, I do see water, Division 1 water under page 3, 254, line 2544. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. We can get back to council about this once I inquire with our chief.
Okay, thank you. Because I know in a previous life, I've seen the billing that was accidentally sent from the county to that station, and there was quite a bill of water, which leads me to page 24, looking at the breakdown, because we want to keep a proper tab on what our costs are for our contractor. I do not see any line item for water for the Highway 63 base, and I believe we were just updated recently that water is being hauled in now versus them hauling their own water. But there's no line item for the cost of having a water truck come out, or the frequency, or from when they were taking water on their own. And then as we're monitoring the costs that are being done through the local vendor in Wandering River there, where they have signing authority, how are those costs being monitored, breaking down between District 1 fire and the contractor, i.e. Culligan bottles for drinking water versus the supplied water, propane tanks for their barbecue, and also we're missing all of their internet charges. And I know for a fact they have more than one internet subscription at that location. Again, looking on page 24 of your agenda. because the internet cannot go from the house to the shop to the house, to the office building. And where would I find that information? Again, just looking at what I thought was a full breakdown on page 24.
Through the chair, as for portable water delivery, you'll see on page 25, line 2544. We did budget 7,500 for potable water delivery under 2025.
Through what line item?
2544.
Okay, thank you.
And then as far as for internet, we also have line 2217. We have internet as well. For 2025, we have 2250 budgeted.
Sorry, what line item?
2217.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And that's sufficient for the number of services they have for internet up there?
I believe the chief factored it in. Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else, Counselor Cromwell?
Yes, thank you. Page number 28 of your agenda, line item 2270. What is body worn annual times 5? But then later on, we have looks like 3 for body cam. I'm just curious on the difference between the 5 and the 3. So body worn annual, 320 times 5. What are the 5?
Who's chair? I can inquire about that and get back to you. I
Okay.
believe it would be 5 members, but 3 CPOs and potentially fire chief and deputy chief, but I'm just guessing. But I
Okay.
can inquire and get back to you about it.
Thank you, because they'll bring up a different conversation on what is the liability of fire wearing a body cam, but that's it. Okay, I appreciate you looking into that for me. I'll give the mic up for a minute, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything to bring forward? Counselor Anderson?
Thank you. On page 29 of the agenda package, line 2755 for the police funding model. To our through the chair to the members of the table, were we not informed at RMA that the police funding model contributions would be frozen at last year's contribution model numbers? So
I believe you're absolutely correct on that.
I wasn't sure if it was just in my notes or if that was an official announcement. So I
If
wanted
it
to
made
check.
it to your notes, it also made it to the back of my brain, so I hope you're right.
Thank you. And that's all until we get further in.
Thank you. It also made it to the paper. The town was very happy that it was frozen. So, so that would mean then that, on page 29, line item 2755 would change from 639.2, or pardon me, 671.2 to 639.2. Thank you. Anybody else? Pretty quiet bunch.
Can I jump way ahead?
Please.
I was looking page 39 for ditch brushing and beaver control, those types of things. Is that enough? I just there was no actuals reported on 2023 for the budget for 60,000. Do we need it?
Go ahead,
For
please.
beaver control, is that enough? Or
What what ends up, no, go ahead, if you want.
As the chair, I was just going to say, we did review each line item and these amounts were approved by the departments.
If you're wondering what that beaver control budget is in there and under infrastructure, road construction infrastructure, it's not to do with ASB, it's to do with if we send, it's just another budget for under maintenance that that sometimes we cover that under beaver control under there. It's kind of like another little, you know, if I'm gonna call a spade, it's kind of like another little slush fund, eh? You know, that if we're getting high on one budget, we still have another budget we could look at. Because depending on the year and depending on what the issue is regarding the beaver control, that can be charged to them. That's to help out ASB on their end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Seeing Zoom people are quiet. Here we're quiet in the room. Okay. Do you know which category?
There was a line item and I'm trying to find it right now. For, I believe it was listed as Hamlet beautification or something like that. Counselor Chamblick, do you have that recorded?
Not Hamlet beautification. It was a beautification program under page 15 for 2,500. I don't know what that.
That's, yeah, that's
Program
what I was
is.
talking about. Thank you.
I'm sorry, which line item?
Sorry, page 15.
Yep.
Beautification program.
Find the line item.
That'd be
Oh,
under
there we
line
go.
item
22.
2250, bottom line.
Contract certification program.
To the chair, we can get back to you about it, but I believe it's the landscaping around the buildings.
So if I'm.
The flowers that we get every year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Anderson, did you? No, okay. Does anybody else, before we talk about the elephant in the room? Let's see. Well, if I'm not seeing anything on the screen, and so Counselor Cromwell?
Okay, yeah, sorry, thank you. Page 28. 1530 fines, bylaw fines. We're only budgeting $1,000 for bylaw fines for a year. Is that our expectation? Just seems like a very low number.
Sorry, through the chair, is that line 1530?
Yes, 1530.
Through the chair, we can also mark that down and maybe have the chief come and answer some of these questions related to enforcement and fire.
Thank you.
Okay, is that everything you have, Counselor Cromwell, for now? He's thinking. Okay. If nobody else has anything further, if we can move to page 46 and 47, which is our water supply budget. We had quite a conversation earlier with regards to the water supply and some discussion. So does anybody, where would any people like to go for this? Where would the council like to go? Do we have any wishes, wants?
I guess it would be nice to know the actual cost of what this water, what the water is actually costing us. not on a 6-year program or 6-year estimate average. But maybe 2023 have the actual cost of what our water costed us to get there.
Okay, I agree. So that would probably become a motion of council to request administration to bring back our actual 2023 costs. Is that?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll add that to the end of the report here. Just give me a second to write that down. Direct administration to bring back the actual costs for the 2023 year
2023 year for supply of water.
to supply water.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I ask a question?
please.
Like you want to see the complete mathematical breakdown and everything like that as well?
Yeah, like how much it cost us
Okay.
to bring water from the water commission all the way to the tap.
Okay, Councilor Anderson?
Could we possibly amend that to include water and wastewater? So we're looking at the full system costs. 'Cause if you're looking at the bylaw, eventually, it makes sense to have both in there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, there's no objection to that.
Okay. Perfect. Do we want to leave it as costs, or do we want to explore further minimums that was we discussed? Do we want to explore reserves at this time? Just wondering where council would like to go.
I'd like to definitely talk about the minimum right now.
Okay.
I would like to see that dropped from 10 cubic meters to 5. That will play an impact on our budget rate, so I'd like to see that change made.
Okay, how does everybody feel about that? Is there any further discussion, or should we be asking Councillor Hall?
I'd like to see some data, and like, can we get to database decisions? Maybe admin could provide us kind of the average use of our residences, so that instead of just picking numbers, we take the data that we do have access to and figure out what the typical household uses, and then we can make a choice. Maybe we want to round up to the next nearest cube or whatever, but I think we should learn from the past where we sort of made an arbitrary decision that was not based on data with the 10 and actually get some research and figure out what typically are people using in a household. You know, we've heard what Councillor Minns uses. That type of information would be really useful, so we hit the mark in a defendable way.
Understood. Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Cromwell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand where Councillor Hall is coming from. However, water rates are not meant to be an average. They're meant to be a user pay in all reality at some point or another. And dropping the minimum does not impact those who use more. It helps those who do not use 10, and is that avenue that we can go to again improve life and cost for our residents. If you use more than 10, if you use more than 5, if you use more than 11, you pay for what you use.
So not
Dropping
have a
the
minimum.
minimum does not affect those that use more than 10, but is a benefit for those that do not. And in good conscience, I can't say you use 4 cubes, we're charging you for 10 because that's the average number out there. Why are we using those people to bolster the pocket for no gain to themselves? Doesn't work.
I just have a question, and I appreciate the comments. Do we have a way of determining the residential average cubes as use as compared to commercial? Do we have a way of determining that?
You mean the number of accounts and the total amount that we've sold? Yeah, we would be able to, we would have that information.
Right, so we would be able to provide, you know, as
Yeah.
Counselor Hall mentioned, to provide that data, and that way we do have the informed decision. And I mean, I agree, I'm wholeheartedly willing, wanting, and seeing that we should lower our minimum, but I also agree that, you know, the data provides good information and allows us to be making informed decisions. So where do we want to go with that one?
Yeah, I agree with that. If we get to receive the data, because it's just a monthly read on our water consumption, so you just run an Excel sheet and get her.
Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. And I know I've said, and I understand data is great, but again, you cannot assume everyone has to be in the average at the middle part. And it's high time that you pay for what you use, you don't pay for what you don't use. And that average is upping their wastewater, sewer charges, everything throughout the board. And it may not be a huge percentage. It may be 3, it may be 12. Point is, it needs to be fair for those people. And that's why having a lower minimum and then user pay afterward is the best way to fight for our ratepayers and for their needs.
Thank you. Anyone else like to weigh in? Oh, Counselor Hall.
So, I think as part of this, I mean, discussion, we do need to talk about volumes and in what volume are we willing to provide the subsidy for. And so, you know, maybe it's not a minimum, maybe it's there's a certain amount that everybody gets at a particular rate, and then after that it moves to full cost recovery. But, you know, the statement that you should pay for what you use is inconsistent with having a minimum period. Maybe we should have a zero minimum. And although, you know, there's an argument that there should be sort of a standby fee just to have the service available. But I think having the data will allow us to kind of think through how we want the water system to work. Perhaps we do want to, at certain higher volumes, charge a little bit closer to cost recovery. And so knowing what a typical household would use might allow us to set a ceiling on cheap water is good up to this volume, and then it goes up to a slightly more cost recovery type basis, because that really then focuses on the residents that use our water versus, say, industry that draws water from our lines and hauls it out of the county in some cases and resells it. So maybe the answer is a zero minimum, or maybe it's a flat rate standard charge like occurs in other municipalities. I think this warrants a lot more discussion, and we should keep working on it like we're doing.
I appreciate that. I think there's a couple of different opinions, of course, at the table. Do you have a motion you'd like to propose, Counselor Hall?
I think it's a bit premature for a motion. I mean, given that it's a discussion, we should, you know, I would be interested in having that data so that we know where that is, and then that number is your typical use, and then we can make decisions later. And just I think we've seen collectively what comes from rushing decisions, and we certainly have the time to get this. I don't want to say to get it right, but we certainly have the time to put more thought into it, and you know, to consult more widely on what we want to use the water service that we provide for.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm just curious, are we in agreement that administration maybe could bring back the average cubes used by residential and commercial customers, or where's everybody at for that? We have heads nodding. We have one shaking no. So I guess maybe coming out of this, we can bring that motion to the table and see where we sit. Sounds good?
Do we, Madam Chair, do we
Yes.
currently have a motion anywhere outstanding? And again, I think we do, but you can tell me if I'm incorrect. To have administration bring back well, I think actually the actual cost, because I still have a very hard time with the numbers that are sitting here in front of me and how that can be.
Okay. We will have, I've written it down to have it, the motion brought to the table. My only question would be, when is administration able to bring that back and how much time is required?
That was true cost. Yeah, that really shouldn't be that onerous. We can probably have it in certainly before Christmas, before we're done for Christmas break.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
Some of these questions you've asked so far, I'm not too worried about us being able to bring it back.
okay, excellent. So is that satisfactory for everyone? Okay.
Can I just add, Reeve, does true cost include the capital item then? Like, I think that's something when you have a line, is part of the cost of using the line paying for your share of wearing out the line? Or do we just assume that there'll be a line ferry in the future that will, gift us with a new line when this one's worn out? So I think that's where we'll see some debate is, what do you include in true cost? To me, depreciation is part of your true cost. It's the only responsible way to do business, but I don't think that's a universal view.
Madam Chair, Councillor Hall is right. Do we have a complete life cycle plan for all our water and sewer utilities? Nope. Is there some budgeted for it today? Yes, those are two different things. I don't know if they're tied to a long-term plan, have no idea, but they're included in budget today. Long-term life cycle, we'd have to go away and research, has it ever been done? And there's a chance it has, and that's where these numbers come from. And we'd have to confirm that. I suspect not, because I'm worried the number's a lot bigger than the amount we have in the budget. Let's put it that way. I think we're underestimating long-term capital costs.
And I believe the Water Commission has some reports that would be useful to the CAO on the physical infrastructure.
Through the chair, is there a way that commission would share that information with council then?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer. I believe they certainly did with me, and I can absolutely share it with all of council. And I thought for the county stuff, because we've had it for about 4 months, I thought I did. But subsequent to that, they also shared with us the other partners in the commission. So I'll make sure that council gets all those reports.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Should we move on to the next line item that we discussed this morning? And it was to the surplus, moving the surplus. Did we go forward with that? I can't remember. We've been flipping through stuff so fast. But to move the surplus from 2023 to the water line, did we have we didn't have a motion for that. Okay. Do we want to discuss that item? Okay, so are we looking at in agreement to 2023 surplus in a motion to move it from unrestricted to the water capital reserve? I can't remember the name of the account, but I think it's for water line and equipment and capital. Okay, so I'll just quickly write that one down.
And could you clarify where in the agenda that surplus is disclosed to us, please?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Could you clarify where in the agenda that surplus is disclosed to us? We're talking about a motion, but I'm just having trouble catching up to where that information is.
Oh, I see. Okay, so in the 2023 budget, the actuals, we had a surplus of 156 and change.
In the agenda, which page are we on again?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're on the water supply budget. 46 and 47.
So there's unless you have a different version of the agenda than I do, there is no 2023 numbers in here.
No, it is a figure from the 2023 budget. Are you saying we are not able to discuss that at this
No, I'm
point?
just trying to understand where the information's coming from so I can follow along.
Okay, so in our 2023, our 2024 budget booklet that we have been given, it shows the 2023 actuals. And in the water supply of that particular document, it shows that we have a surplus of 156 plus. And we're looking to move that from unrestricted reserves to the capital water line and equipment reserve
And this is on page,
of the 2024 budget. Thank you. Page 37.
that's road construction.
Okay, just give me a second. I'm pulling out now the operational capital 2024 budget.
Oh, we're going back to an old document, Kate.
And on the 2024 budget, that is page 37 of 67. And it's from, I don't know if you can see that, probably not, but it is our operational capital budget 2024 to 2028. Are you able to find that, Councillor Hall?
Well, I don't have that document in front of me, so that's okay. I thought we were talking about something that was in the current agenda package.
Okay,
I understood now that we're talking about a document that's not part of our agenda package and I just don't have that handy, so go ahead.
right. It's not in, it's just the amount that we were discussing, which is $156,627. So if everyone is okay to, we'll put that motion forward and see where it goes. I'm just gonna quickly write it down. Move water surplus. Alrighty. So the next item for water supply, if folks would like to discuss, that we talked about earlier, the reserve contributions. Where is there an appetite to have that conversation to look at where our reserves came from and what would seem, I personally would like to know what is a cap that would be appropriate for reserves for our capital water equipment and lines. If we do go ahead, like I mentioned earlier, the 156,000 and change transfer, we would be sitting around 1.9-ish million at the end of this year. We had budgeted in 2024 62.9. Prior to that was 44 something. I can't remember the exact figure. And then we're looking in 2025 at boosting it to 107,200 for reserves. Again, this increases the end amount for per cube. It increases that cost, the higher the reserves that we have. If we do a transfer where we are actually pretty much in my brain saving ourselves 3 years almost of reserves in if we kept the 2023 at 44,000. So I'm not sure where everyone's at, but Councillor Hall, please go ahead.
We just a minute ago, we're talking about having admin provide us the full cost. I think that's the discussion that should lead to the reserve fund. And you know, what $1 million is not even close to a drop in the bucket, to use a water term. You know, an appropriate cap would be full replacement cost. We are so far underfunded on reserves that in our lifetimes, I don't think it's something we have to worry about if we're contributing 100 grand a year, $150,000 a year. And if we, because I think one of the other things that we've seen historically is if we have a bit of a surplus, it goes into those reserves. If there's a year with a bit of a, we use it to smooth out some expenses as well. So if there's a year where there's a couple of breaks that happen that exceed the sort of annual budget, we can draw back out of that fund to smooth out the costs there. So I would submit to council that you know, the conversation around reserves is probably more appropriate once we've had a conversation around the full cost of water and we know what component that capital is. Because again, on a system our size, we're going to spend, you know, $16 million to run a line only a few miles to the west. We have miles and miles of line in the hamlets that will be very expensive to maintain and replace because it's under pavement a lot of the time. So I think we've got a long way to go, and I'd be content to wait for admin to tell us that once they work out the full cost. I don't think they're separable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cromwell.
Thank you. And I do appreciate that councils before us left us in a position where we are definitely underfunded in reserve, and we've had to make very hard choices for a lot of people, and will continue to have to make very hard choices because we do not have the backup that we need. However, Rome was not built in a day. We cannot expect to fix the problem in 2, 3, 4, 10 years. And to make such a massive jump in a utility that affects day-to-day residents, I would like to see that figure dropped to at least a 2024 rate, because whether or not we're getting actual data from administration later on or not, that extra contribution is an extra charge. And again, that $40,000 extra, $50,000, whatever it works out to, is great for a reserve. It is not going to make or break the bank. It is not going to impact whether we put a new line in tomorrow or not, but it will play an impact on our residents that are paying that bill. And if you can tell me and look me in the eye and say $50,000 will build that line, then come and say it. If not, $50,000 broken up over a water rate will make a difference.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
My apologies, but I had an emergency come up, so I'm gonna have to excuse myself.
Thank you. Take care. Shoot me a hand there. Take care. Okay, so I personally think that the 107,200 is extremely aggressive for the water supply transfer to reserves. When we're looking at our 2025 budget on page 46, we're looking at a deficit of 126,419. It was mentioned somewhere in here and I can't find it, and I wish I had it highlighted, but it was mentioned that we had this intention to have a surplus in our water supply. I read this somewhere and I can't find it. And that is not something that I think is, we shouldn't be, I call it a profit on our water. I get it builds the reserves, but are we asking the customers of our water supply to build our reserves? If we're looking after strictly the water supply itself, I believe that we're looking at 107,000 is just too aggressive. So I would even be, if council's interested in not halting it for those few years, if we do the transfer, that we go back to the 2023 rate of 44,000, not 66, 62 or 107, but that's my personal opinion. Does anybody else have anything to weigh in there?
Madam Mayor, I do agree and like the idea of putting something to reserves. And like I've said, though, that it's not going to make or break. And I could get behind scratching out that 107.2 on this budget and then getting better information. I'm a little bit on the fence of completely wiping it out. I would like to at least see it brought back to previous year's rate and continue to make little baby steps, inch by inch is all we're able to do no matter what. And play both halves there a little bit.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Should we put a motion at the end of this on the table regarding that, or where are we at? Yeah, no, yes, yep, okay. Give me a second to write that one down.
Madam Chair, Counselor Wallach has.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry I didn't see that. Please go ahead, Counselor Wallach.
So I just to clarify, I'm just a bit confused. So if we change the reserve, does that mean we change the rate? So we have to change the bylaw? Is that, I'm just confused. These conversations going in circles.
If, would you like to go ahead and answer? Thank you.
Sure, Madam Chair. To the chair, what we put into the reserve will not change the bylaw. It's just for budget purposes going forward 2025 onward. So if we want to change the rate, that would be an amendment to the bylaw. That's a completely different thing.
Sorry, I'm still writing. I'll be with you in a second. The lowering the reserve contribution, does, when you mention a previous year, Counselor Cromwell, is that 2023? Okay, is that 40, yeah, I can't remember the exact number. I'd have to pull it here. 40, pardon me, 46,000. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Counselor Hall.
Just to kind of follow up on this subject, the net water supply is at a minus 126, right? So we're already at a loss. I believe in our initial discussions when we moved rates a couple of years ago, the plan was to get them to net zero, never to generate a surplus. But as part of that net zero, it was to include some transfer to reserves that would be based on a multi-year running average of repair costs and things like that. So I think like, again, personally, I'd be happier if admin came back to us with a recommendation to smooth that number out so that I think our ratepayers are better served by predictable numbers, not having them jump all over from year to year if we've had a big repair last year and we need to move them around. So I think it's putting the cart ahead of the horse to just pick a number that we like because we like the number. Like realistically, $100,000 a year over 10 years only, or over 100 years is still only $10 million. Like it's not, we're not over contributing in any way here when we look at everything we're doing. So I don't think we should necessarily be going up without data, but I also think we should just hold our own until we have some data to base that decision on.
Okay, thank you, Council. Deputy Reeve Mins.
I guess, yeah, I like building reserves and all this other stuff all the time and that. I don't, if we change this number from 107 down to, what are we talking, 43, 40, 46,000? All it's doing is just changing this number in the budget itself for right now. When we get the information back and all of a sudden it comes back, well, no, we need $70,000 to do this. We can change that number, right? We can change that number later, so it's a half a dozen one, a dozen the other. If everybody votes for changing the number, all it's doing is changing one number. And then we can change it back. So that's my point of view on it.
Except
Thank
by
you.
lowering it, you send a signal that it's going down and then people get their hopes up. Like to me, you're
Well,
better off to not get their hopes up and then lower it later when we have some good data. But again.
and I
Just giving you
appreciate
credit.
that. I think though that if we do go forward with transferring that 156, we've really boosted the reserves for water capital. Just doing that alone. So I don't think it's going to be detrimental for us to lower this particular one for the 2025 year. But that's just, again, my opinion. Counselor Hall, did you want to look at a different motion here rather than what I've written down when we come out of this report to direct administration to lower the reserve contribution for the 2025 year to 46,000? Would you prefer something else be put forward for a motion?
Following up on Councillor Mins's comment, the idea of just changing it. Well, let's just leave it alone then until we have something and make the change that we know we're gonna end up with, like. If there's no basis to make the change, so I would, like, I'll just vote opposed to that motion is all, cause I think. I just don't think there's any value in arbitrarily making a change, like go down to 2023, we go down to $1, we can go up to $1 million, like. Let's leave it alone until we have a number, because it's, in my view, always better to bring it down at the end. Rather than bring it down and get people's hopes up, so if, you know, the majority of the room wants to just lower it based on. Some ideology, then we should just do that, that's how it works.
Okay.
I'll just vote opposed.
Okay, thank you. Are we moving on to just the next item, I guess, if nobody else has anything for input there? Alrighty, and this one is the big kicker, to subsidize water across the county rather than be user pay. We chatted about that. Who sits where? Anybody want to weigh in?
I think the majority of us that, speaking for myself, you know, subsidization is important for equalization for all of our ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cromwell?
We subsidize many things across the county. I'll tell you, we subsidize the rate for a multiplex. We're at a huge loss rate there. We should be making water affordable for the people, and that should absolutely be subsidized, period.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor. Deputy Reedman.
Yeah.
Get it.
I agree with subsidization and all this stuff, but if we could get close to cost recovery, I don't think that there's a person out there that doesn't mind paying for what they get. And if we get close, I don't like to overcharge. That's one thing I don't want to do, is overcharge for water. I think we need to get as close to cost recovery as we can. If there's a minimal subsidization to stay below overcharging, I'd be great for that. I don't want to start subsidizing across the board by 50%, but let's get it close, and then again, with the information that'll come back from administration, maybe we can figure out what that close number is.
Okay.
Right? That's what
Appreciate that.
that's what I'm looking at.
Thank you. Councillor Hall?
I'm gonna maybe agree and disagree a little bit with Councillor Mins. I don't think there's anything wrong with us just admitting and deciding we're gonna subsidize water to residents. Where I will, you know, object is that we need to have a plan on the industrial, like the heavy duty users. And I feel like there's general agreement around the table and all the discussion that we've heard with some level of subsidy and try to find a way to bring rates down. And but I think this discussion would be more fruitful if we postponed it to a time when we had an idea of the real costs and see where that is, because that's going to give us a sense of how we feel about how much we want a subsidy. Because I suspect there are people who, you know, have a number in mind. They want to see water at X dollars per cube. And you know what? We've talked about how do we make this a good and livable place, a place where people can afford to be, and providing a base level of water at a very reasonable rate seems entirely consistent with that. But let's figure out those numbers and then move on to, you know, a discussion where we've got those facts in front of us. So I would submit this is something we should just kick forward to the next time, and then everybody can think about, do we want to subsidize oil companies who are using our water? And maybe we do because we're happy they're in our region, or maybe we don't. You know, the other ones that are in there are farms who tend to use large quantities of water, but you know, so I just think there'd be more fruitful discussion if we all had some time to wait for those facts and then ruminate on it at a later date.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll just throw my 2 cents in. We're looking currently at a document here that shows us everything we subsidize, which is pretty much everything other than water, right down to pest control. You know, trapping beaver and dealing with our coyote issues, and all of those things are being subsidized, but not everyone benefits from those as well. So I'm in full support of subsidizing water across the county rather than it be user pay. Of course, getting it to close to the cost as we can, as cost recovery as we can, in the efficiencies that we realize. I agree that, you know, we do have more information coming forward, and that might be, as you mentioned, a better time for that discussion at that time, once we get all of the costs and whatnot to us. So I'm happy to go with that. If everyone else is happy to wait to have that conversation again. Where are we at?
Yep.
Oh, we just lost 2 people. Did we? Shall we maybe take a recess until we can bring back our Zoom attendees here? So we'll take 5 minutes. Thanks very much. We've returned from recess. Unfortunately, we have lost quorum and therefore we must adjourn our meeting for today. Thank you all for coming and tuning in.